All right, hi everybody. I can't seem to figure out how to get Kaltura or Screencast-O-Matic on my computer. It's not downloading, so I'm going to try to do it this way. So I'm going to be discussing the evidence-based treatment of cognitive behavior therapy as it relates to alcohol addiction mostly, but it is also effective with cannabis, opioid addiction. Some studies have shown with nicotine addiction, as well as cocaine use and cannabis. So CBD helps confront the lies that addicts tell themselves and help us to recognize that chemically dependent individuals think differently. And in order to continue with their addictive behavior, they must have a high level of cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance means that it's a repression of the truth from the consciousness. It's the only way that the addict can continue to use while knowing there's a problem, because they come up with these little lies, such as, I can handle it, they'll never know, it's not that bad, I only drink on weekends, I only have one drink, even though they're not using a jigger to measure, and it actually could be 5 drinks, but if it's in one glass and it's to the top, it's 1 drink. So all these lies that they've told themselves, and it becomes more than just to cover it up, it's just that it becomes a belief system for them. The technique of cognitive behavior therapy is based on helping the client for their individual needs to identify their stressors, goals, triggers, and feelings. The session times are more limited, they are collaborative, and they are structured. In addition to the therapist's structured plan for each session, the client collaboratively is asked what goals they would like to work on or things they'd like to discuss while in session. I came across a video by Dr. Fulton on YouTube, and she uses an example of relapse prevention as constructed by Alan Marlett, who it's mostly an older strategy from 1985, but she says that it's really effective, and as part of this therapy to be treated as an inevitability with our clients. So with substance use disorder, there is a correlation to the learned behavior by association or by its consequences. So therefore, the addiction is a learned behavior. And it's either reinforced by the association we have to things. So let's say that every day the guy drives by the bar and his association is that's where he goes and feels better. He's going to stop there every day. Or by the consequences. That one I wasn't as clear about, but I think that has something to do with, I feel better when this happens, and it reinforces it. And even if it doesn't feel good the next day or whatever the other consequences are, it's still a learned behavior. Also, Dr. Fulton wants us to note that in a socially deprived setting or limited access to a certain substance, the likelihood of use is decreased. So if there's no access to it, there's high unlikelihood that you can get a hold of it. And that cultural relevance can be effective to the system of individuals as well. Addiction is maintained through the pattern of, if I drink alcohol, I will be more calm, or I will be more social. And there's a permission to use things also like, oh, it's a celebration, it's my birthday, I had a hard day. These are all beliefs that individuals successfully trick themselves into believing who are addicted. Let's see. There's a lot of excuse making for the addictive vice. And there's a phenomena called the abstinence violation effect, which is a concept that usually and essentially means the F it factor. So I like to use the analogy of like, oops, I dropped my phone. Well, now that I dropped my phone, I'm just going to smash it to bits. So I like to use the analogy of like, oops, I dropped my phone. Well, now that I dropped my phone, I'm just going to smash it to bits. So kind of the same thing, like, well, I haven't drank for a long time. I'm going to have one drink. Well, I had the one drink. Now I'm just going to get drunk. Now I'm going to get annihilated. So that also should be considered as part of the CBT in our goal setting and in our acknowledgement of the thoughts and behavior strategies. So in treatment, the breakdown for CBT is to identify the goals of treatment and antecedents and determinants that contribute to the substance use. So essentially breaking down the why and the how behind it and making correlations for our clients to start acknowledging where the root of these things are. Then we need to do a functional analysis, which is what is happening before, during, and after the use. Then ask the client to examine their situation, thoughts, feelings, behaviors, positive and negative consequences of their actions, and perhaps a log. There's an appendix on page 820 or something in the textbook, appendix 66, that has a similar log to that, and helping our clients to sort of track their thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and to be accountable and to see correlations and patterns. And then focusing on the present identity, the present current thoughts and behaviors. So, being mindful, being present. I noticed that you seem anxious. Tell me more about that. What are you feeling right now? Or this week when you decided to drink, what was that like for you? What were you experiencing? So get them to the deeper, more meaningful thing. Then from there, you're psychoeducating and addressing skill deficits and practicing coping strategies. So it's not so much about pointing out, oh, you're not very good at this emotional regulation, but hey, I've noticed that you tell me you feel like drinking more when you are stressed out at work, or when your wife yells at you, or when you feel like your dad doesn't listen to you. How are some ways that we can to think of, when you're experiencing this, instead of drinking, what can we do? Can you call a friend? Can you go out to work out at the gym? Is there an AA meeting you can go to so you have somebody to, support you? Something that's like a practice coping strategy. And then from there, we're building our skills and build our toolbox. So this is just helping our client get better at their communication and emotional regulation through the implementation of distraction, seeking help, mindfulness, urge surfing, which I really like, instead of discipline, or because I think when you say like, oh, I'm not disciplined enough, especially with something like addiction, it really sets you up for failure if you don't deliver, or it creates some kind of character deficit, rather than acknowledging that it's a disease that you need to cope around and make strategies. And I like the idea that urge surfing. So, high, low urge, high level of craving, low level of craving. This is my alternative to do some work here. And then examining and challenging self-talk. So, when you talk to a lot of addicts, they often mention low self-esteem, loneliness. They have certain negative thought patterns about themselves or others. Usually when it is about others, it's a reflection of things they're feeling on the inside. This happens a lot with children too. So for instance, if you had a kid that was being called into class for, you're being called in as a parent because he's been disruptive in class, the teacher or most adult authority figures will say something like, oh, he's just out of control, around and make strategies. And I like the idea that urge surfing. So, high, low urge, high level of craving, low level of craving. This is my alternative to do some work here. And then examining and challenging self-talk. So, when you talk to a lot of addicts, they often mention low self-esteem, loneliness. They have certain negative thought patterns about themselves or others. Usually when it is about others, it's a reflection of things they're feeling on the inside. This happens a lot with children too. So for instance, if you had a kid that was being called into class for, you're being called in as a parent because he's been disruptive in class, the teacher or most adult authority figures will say something like, oh, he's just out of control. They'll project all these malicious things, but a lot of times children's brains aren't developed to the point of being manipulative like that. And I think the same goes for a lot of addicts, is that they're not intentionally doing anything, but they are acting in a way that isn't great, right? And it's not liked by a lot of people. And so this particular Dr. Swan, actually, she talked about how when you're confronted with that as the parent, ask yourself how you feel. Like, how is that child making you feel? And that's the mirror. So, well, he's making me feel insecure, like less than a mother. I'm a bad mother. He's making me feel embarrassed. He's making me feel not seen. He's making me feel out of control. And then, as the therapist, kind of flipping that around, well, that's exactly how he's feeling, he or she. So, much like with the addict, when they are saying my wife is making me do this and my, coworkers are making me do that or feel this or think that, I think that's an opportunity to mirror that for them. That maybe that's coming from them and not from the other people. So, just working through that self-talk and belief systems, and those belief systems are also undoing the addict's web of lies, deceit, sneakiness, all sorts of behavioral rituals to cover up the addiction, to keep it from being known. Even if they are there for therapy, they may not be ready to admit or acknowledge that they need to stop. They may be there because they are court-ordered. They may be there because their spouse has made them. They themselves may not acknowledge that they need help yet. And so saying, let's, for instance, their belief is, well, I'm in control. I can stop anytime I want. Okay. And in our textbook on page 73, in Perkinson's talking about this, I can stop anytime I want. Okay. Well, when was the last time you stopped? How long did you stop for? And just sitting there and letting them have to marinate on that, maybe they're not as good at hiding as they thought they were, or maybe they aren't as in control as they are pretending to be, or maybe that their own rules are their own rules that they've concocted to justify, to permiss the behavior. They made the rule, well, when I've had a hard day, it's okay for me to drink, for instance. Well, not everybody has that rule. And at what point do you stop drinking, and how much are you drinking? And, is it every day? Are there any off days? So kind of getting our client to acknowledge the skill deficits and then finding better coping strategies and expanding their toolbox is very helpful for our clients. Then also this Dr. Fulton, she talked about, keeping lapse and relapse as part of the process and relapse prevention. So treating it as an inevitability and really addressing more the F up factor, she calls it. So it was what I was talking about earlier. So you had a drink, you screwed up, but that doesn't mean you need to undo everything. It doesn't mean